Ladies and gentlemen, today what we're going to look at is self-love and self-shine. Think about that. We've all heard the statement. We've all heard it many, many times. You have to take care of yourself before you can take care of anybody else. We know this. We know it. Yet so many of us don't do it. We lie to ourselves. We say, I'm fine. I'll be okay. I'm going to figure this out by myself. I don't need any help. Why is self-love, self-shine, self-care? Why is it so difficult? More importantly, how are we going to change this pattern? We're going to find out today. My name is Frank Zaccari. This is Energy Healing and Integrative Wellness. My associates and I are putting together a series of wellness centers, which should be out sometime in 2022, we hope. And it will be the integration of complementary energy and alternative wellness. Now, this is how I met my guest today, Minnku Buttar. Now, let me tell you something about her. This is an amazing woman. She's the founder of the Circle of Joy, which is a masterclass and retreats. She's in transformation and mindfulness facilitator, life coach. She has a passionate vision to help women thrive, heal, and empower themselves to become unstoppable. Isn't that wonderful, ladies? Become unstoppable and claim your life on your terms. Minnku, welcome to Integrative Wellness.
Thank you so much, Frank. Real honor. Absolutely delighted to be here with you today. I've heard so many of your interviews, and I think you're just doing an amazing job. So thank you. Thank you. Honor is mine.
Thank you. Thank you. We spoke about maybe a month or so ago, and as we were talking, I said at one point you had what most people would consider to be just this ideal life. You had success. You had in your business, you had success in your family, you had money, you had prestige, and yet you said below the surface, something wasn't right. What was going on back
then? Gosh, Frank, that seems really like another lifetime. You know, something came to my mind as you spoke, and if I could just quickly recount.
Sure.
What was happening and taking it from there. I'm sure we can talk about where I am today, but there was a story that I heard a long time ago when I was very young. My father used to talk about this lady who had a little farm, and the vandals would come and destroy her fence all the time. And really, she was such a wreck and so annoyed and frustrated. And her husband noticed her frustration, and actually explained to her that, you know what, sweetheart, we're in life either a builder or we're a destroyer. And she just decided, she says, I'm a builder. And just with that one sentence, I think, it was so beautiful because her whole mindset changed. And the funny part is, Frank, I always thought I was a builder. I really did think, because like you said, life was going really fine. I was an expatriate wife. I'd lived in about 8 cities in India as an Air Force brat, as we call ourselves, as well as I got married, and I went and I was an expatriate wife for about living in 9 countries. But I have no idea how to really put this, but there are wounds that you can't see, Frank. I don't know if you relate to that.
Yes.
That hurt and bleed the most. I was a caretaker for 17 years for a very dysfunctional family. Even though I was enjoying this fabulous exotic locations, kids in international schools, but the marriage was falling apart, and it was a lonely life. So there's this grief that comes up. It's such an overwhelm when you're going through it, and you start playing this victim role.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a very addictive victim role, and that's what I was doing. So all of a sudden, Frank, I looked at myself. I had this almost get out of my body and look at myself, and I said, oh my God. And I said to myself, Minnku, you're on a self-sabotage and a destroyer path. there is no way you're a builder. That's all in your head. And a divorce later, I came back to India, Frank, and I was lucky. I really, there was just so many beautiful enlightened masters who passed by in my life. I have meditated in the Himalayas and by the Ganges. And I think today, maybe, Frank, I can actually call myself a builder. And, that's what I'm doing.
Yeah, you absolutely are. One of the things that intrigued me when we were speaking was you said it was time to move from the tangible to the intangible. Would you elaborate on that for us?
Uh, uh, right. So, with all this happening and a realization that I had to move from a destroyer to being a builder, I gave up 7 years into a fashion business, a very successful business. In fact, I'm also an artist, Frank. So I've been putting my art onto fabrics forever. What was happening is I needed to find a greater depth and purpose to my life. And my life had become about, holding the champagne glass and covered in every tabloid possible. And I just thought, like, hold on, there's more to life. This seems such a farce. And the kind of people I was meeting, it was such a surface, everyone was looking for surface validations. Uh, and that's when I just said, okay, what is it? How can I marry passion, purpose, and make it a profession? And that's when I actually came across the concept of ikigai. It's not ikigai, it's ikigai, which is marrying your passion, purpose, and profession. And it's really strange, Frank, if you will allow me. I actually met this Okinawan lady. And I met her in a very fast train going, if I'm not wrong, I think we were going from Tokyo to Kyoto. And 45 minutes, we had a chat, and she actually planted that seed. And I knew this tangible world that I was on. I needed to go to something deeper. My purpose was different. And that's when I, went into certifications, mindfulness. I got certified. I did the Tibetan bowls. I did Phyllis Crystal came into my life, and she's such a beautiful, she was 100 when she daughters cutting the ties that bind. And before I knew, Frank, I had this beautiful company self-mastery programs that I was offering to others, which imbibed the wisdom from my masters and my own journey. And I called it the Circle of Joy. So from a very successful fashion business, I moved to this, and I worked on my traumas. The other thing, Frank, which I wanted to always, and I openly, authentically share with people, is walk the talk first, right?
Right.
Heal yourself, heal your traumas, work with your insecurities, your fears. And when you think you're healed to some point and you stop playing the self-sabotage role and the victim role, and then you're ready to bring that to other people. So, so that's really what happened.
That's an incredible story. Minnku, Phyllis Crystal, you speak a lot about her and the cutting the ties that bind.
Right.
What is that, and why did it have such an impact on your life?
She was an amazing 100-year-old soul who had been given these tools and techniques. It was almost like a download. And what she always shared, and that the first time I met her, I was actually told to go pick her up from the airport. So I had this fortune of being with her in my car all alone. And our first conversation, the way she explained it to me, she says 80 to 90% of people who feel anxiety or worry or depression or low self-esteem or if you have experienced invalidation, it's all usually in childhood. So 50% of who we are is DNA and karmic, if you relate to the word, and but 50% is that what might seem like a normal childhood. It could actually be emotional abuse. It doesn't necessarily have to be physical abuse, but I think, Frank, we all as parents have to be so aware of how we say and what we say to children, because this diminishing act that parents do. I mean, don't get me wrong, they mean well and we love our parents. But I think there is a diminishing of self-esteem in children, and I could relate to that, and I connected with her immediately. So what happens is when we are growing up, it's very painful. It's very painful for us to admit to ourselves that our mother or father unconsciously might have undermined us as children. So Phyllis Crystal uses techniques, we use rituals and we use symbols that can give positive messages to the subconscious in order to negate some of the negative conditioning. Does that make sense?
It does. It does absolutely make sense.
Yeah.
We have a thing here in the United States that they call ACEs, Advanced Childhood, Adverse Childhood Experience, Adverse Childhood Experience.
ACE. Okay.
ACE. And we just interviewed Jim Spurleader, who put together a school in the state of Washington addressing what many people call these throwaway kids, that they have been through so many things that here, let's put them over here and get them out of the way. And he's helping to bring them out. That's what you're doing with all these women. Is that correct?
That is correct. We use something called, and that's very prevalent. I know you've heard about it, the inner child healing. So in this process, I actually take my clients back to, it's very automatic. It is so uncanny, Frank, that our subconscious understands, and all of our grief, traumas, memories is ingrained in our DNA. It's just that we've swept things under the carpet so much. So it needs bravery, it needs courage, and say, okay, I'm ready to open this cupboard with skeletons. So when I lead clients, they go back automatically through that process that I lead them through to a time when they might have felt trauma, or there was some shift that happened that made them who they are. It could be a feeling of lack of self-worth, I'm not good enough. That's usually what we adults suffer with.
Yes.
So so there's symbols for fears. In fact, it's very interesting how guilt is so huge, and it can be cut from. So it's a beautiful technique where we assign a symbol to the trauma and the feeling. And I'll give you a small example. A client came to me, and she was developing some tumors in her stomach. And she kind of said to me, she said, Minnku, you know what? I just feel there is unfinished business with my parents. And I said, oh, okay, so should we work through this? She goes, I have a problem because my parents are no more on this earth. And yet I have this guilt that I did not spend enough time with them. Now, this guilt is so corrosive, Frank. It's so toxic. It just eats up into our system, right? And
yes,
you know, we feel even guilty about eating a piece of chocolate that you shouldn't have. And so I worked with her. We assigned a symbol to her, a feeling of guilt at not having spent time and the root cause of that guilt. And it was quite miraculous. 21 days later, we finished the cutting. It's a whole ritual that I led her through. And she went actually for a scan. And this is a documentation I've done as a testimony for myself. Her tumors had actually shrunk. Because I think she'd taken on that trauma and the guilt, and it's just like cancer. It actually finds a way to manifest. So guilt, resentment, not expressing yourself enough, lack of communication. These are all things that we take on onto our bodily manifestations.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We've talked to so many medical doctors who have said exactly what you just said. And these are medical doctors. And they're saying the root cause, which we don't address in United States medicine, is stress, guilt, fear, and trauma.
Right.
But we don't go there. Your program takes people to the root cause.
Yes.
And once you address the root cause, these and doctors tell me, a lot of your physical manifestations go away.
That's true. That's true. And Frank, all we need to do is really to heal ourselves from those unresolved traumas, as I call them, that you sometimes don't even know that you're experiencing, but they start to manifest as burnout in your relationships, as maybe a stagnancy at your workplaces. So all we need as humans really is to be connected to our soul. Also to be in joy, to be in such beautiful space of joy. And it's quite interesting. Before I named my company, the Circle of Joy, Frank, I actually went to Starbucks here in Bangalore in India. And I said, let me find out what joy means for people. And so I did interview 100 people, and I got very weird looks because in India, this is highly, highly unusual for a woman to start random talking. And I just said, what's your idea of joy? What's your idea of joy? And I got answers, such beautiful, joyful answers. They said, I'm just saying generically, if I conclude, they said, oh, rainbows and fireworks and googly eyes and confetti. And it was just so beautiful. And I realized, Frank, that joy is beyond age, gender, and ethnicity. How amazing is that?
It is incredible. It is.
And so I said, okay, so let's just look at how we can bring joy in people's lives. So everything and anything I do with the corporates, with the individuals, it's all, okay, how do we get you to a space where you're joyful and you are happy to jump out of bed in the mornings?
Exactly. I've heard you say there's joy and there's happiness. And happiness is in the moment, and joy is very different. Is that right?
Yes. We loosely, I think, interchange both of those words. Happiness sometimes is just being happy about something, whereas joy, I feel, is this very almost like a spiritual practice, if I can put it like that. It's not a hockey-pocky word, and that's really what I always stress on. It's a very deep feeling which originates in the heart but embraces your soul. Does that make sense?
It does. It absolutely does.
So when I was in a session earlier with 40 women that I was just mentioning to you, I just said, okay, I'm just going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the first thing that comes to your mind that's joyful, let's just shout it out aloud. And I think if we can just be love, be joyful, be in love. I don't think we need validations from outside, Frank. If we could just love ourselves enough, and I think then we're in a very joyful space.
Now, Minnku, with your circle of joy, which you described a little bit there, when I've heard you say you have to acknowledge, embrace, resolve, and heal. Walk us through that a little bit.
Well, Frank, I just feel that you've got to start in a space where you start in a very comfort zone with acknowledging first what you might have denied. So my purpose as a mentor, as a coach, becomes to get everyone to a space where they're ready to acknowledge and finding your ikigai and embracing. So the concept that I really studied post this talk on the strain with the Okinawan lady, I came back and I researched a lot on kintsugi. So I start from a place where we learn to embrace our brokenness, to accept our flaws. That is the biggest, I think, mind block that we all have, because we are going through this euphoria of perfectionism, and there is nothing called perfectionism.
Exactly.
So to imbibe the concept of kintsugi, which is a beautiful, it's a 400-year-old concept where you have this feeling of regret when something is wasted, and then you accept change. I feel if everyone could just embrace kintsugi, which is a philosophy of reverence and restoration, then I think we feel more worthy, and we can apply this principle of this brokenness to our lives. And you just have to be ready to scoop up the pieces of your spirit together. And then once I've done that with whoever I'm working with, and then I said, okay, now I think we are ready to embrace the ikigai. And the ikigai is, of course, like we said, it's marrying your passion, purpose, and profession.
Mm-hmm.
To get clarity on who are you, and what makes you jump out of, what are you resonating with, or it is the things that really resonate with you. How can you inculcate that as your value system? And then I get them into a concept of embracing the concept of wabi sabi. It sounds like a hogwash, but sometimes when we instill a few mindset shifts, Frank, we have to pin it down to a concept. And these concepts are working really beautiful. The concept of wabi sabi is to accept the transient nature of everything.
Mm-hmm.
And once we have created a platform, and I think then people are ready for the spurt automatically, the spurt of growth in personal relationships happens. It's a miracle how stagnancy at work disappears, and people are in a happier space.
Yes, absolutely. That's wonderful. You also
I don't
talk a
know
lot
if
about
that,
surrender.
yeah.
In surrender, I'm going to resist judgment.
Right.
Right. Explain that.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
That's so beautiful. Thank you for bringing that up, Frank. It's like I said, if everything that you try to understand and you find no answers, it can create a lot of frustration. You get very stuck in life. You're very stagnant. But if we can open our hearts and look and see, what is this experience teaching me? Why is this person who's coming out as very difficult? Sometimes people are so toxic. You can choose your friends, you can't choose your relatives. And sometimes you're just faced with a very difficult situation. You're faced with difficult people. Yes, it's really, really tough. We find ways to work around that. So there's a little bit more harmony in how you perceive each other, being in a space where you can't get away from each other, but also surrender to what it's bringing to you. What is my lessons? Why is this person in my life? Because I do believe, Frank, there is nothing called coincidence. There's only providence.
Yes, I agree with you 100%. And that I love how life is transient, the statement that you made, because the situation may not be ideal, but it's going to go away. It's going to change.
Yes, no, actually the situation stays the same. And there's a reason and a season why people enter your lives. And the sooner we accept that, the better it is. What I find is meditation really helps. Mindful really helps, because mindfulness is really huge for me. And I do integrate that in my coaching, Frank, because our human minds have this uncanny way of getting stuck like a broken record on past grievances, incidents. And like Eckhart Tolle says, the power of now. Or we have this anxiety, or what Brené Brown calls as foreboding, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So we always think there's danger lurking around the corner, and you have to be alert. But if we could just actually just drop all of that and keep bringing ourselves in the power of now, if we could just embrace that emotion and go through the emotion versus fighting and swimming against the flow, be in that surrender that you were talking about. I think then it works really well, and people are averse to meditation, and meditation is nothing but just being in the moment of now. You don't have to even sit, because I find even in India, which is a land of munis and rishis,
Right.
a lot of people find it so scary just to close their eyes and sit. And I said, okay, let's do an open-eyed meditation. Let's just observe everything versus close our eyes. Let's go and embrace what's coming our way. So I think it's works very well. And in the end, we do a lot of work on self-love and self-care. How do you integrate and reboot your physical spaces, your mental spaces, and do this clearing, to get into a joyful space. So that's pretty much it, Frank.
I love what you said there. Is I've heard people say, I can't, first off, I can't sit in that position, or I can't keep my hands like this. And I love what you said, find your own peace. Now here I live in San Diego. I live in what's called San Elijo Hills, and I can walk a 2-mile course almost every day, and I can see the ocean. But that's when I'm at peace.
Yeah,
that's when I can resonate.
Yes, I watched the cutest little snail pass me by. I was just sitting there and having this delicious Indian tea. And I just watched the snail. And was he in a rush to get something? No. And it was just so sweet. It just crawled and it was like, and I just said, oh, wow. If we could just embrace every time we walk and we feel the weight of our foot landing on the ground, and we're just in the moment. Sometimes I have a headache, and there's a normal reflex to go get some Panadol or Tylenol. But if you could just say, what is it that I might have exposed myself, and just embrace that little discomfort, I tell you, just sit in meditation, do the breathing, do the pranayam, the holding the breath, 4-7-4, different techniques. Actually, the pain actually dissipates.
It does.
It's
incredible.
Does.
It's amazing. It is. Minnku, this has been just tremendous. We're just about out of time. What last thoughts or ideas do you want to leave with the viewers around the world today?
I would just say that life is beautiful and you are enough. And if we could stop our self-sabotage, we can stop judging ourselves, be kind to ourselves. We can arrive in a very joyful space. We've just got to be alert to the fact that we do not have to dull our shine. We are just absolute beautiful as we are, and try to be a builder and not a destroyer. I always say this, let's claim life on our own terms.
Wonderful.
That's what it is, because what the caterpillar calls the end is for the world a butterfly.
It's the beginning, exactly. Well, this has just been tremendous, Minnku. We're just about out of time. As I mentioned, I want to thank you again for this incredible story and how this transformation and the way you've transformed yourself and how you've dedicated your life to helping so many others, so many people. So thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Frank, for giving me this opportunity to bring my message, because I'm just rooted in this authenticity and this, excited to bring, help women heal and thrive. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure being and having this conversation.
It's the pleasure's all mine. Now, ladies and gentlemen, no matter what life throws at you, and it's going to throw a lot at you, if you've heard today, please do 3 things. Look up, get up, and never, ever give up. If you'd like more information about Minnku, she has a ton of things on her website. She has wellness centers, and she has a number of different shows that she puts on and workshops that can be done virtually. You can see this conversation on Roku TV or on my YouTube channel, Frank Zaccari. And if you go to YouTube, please subscribe. Now, let me leave you with this, as I do every week. None of us are in this alone. And the secret to walking on water is to know where the rocks are. And today, Minnku showed us where many of those rocks are. Join me again next week. We'll look at another life-altering event. Minnku, thank you again.
Thank you, Frank. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year.
Same to you.